Thanks for coming, everybody. My name's Jason Blevins from Colorado Sun. The esteemed Bill Rock from Vail Resorts. We're going to talk skiing. Um, Bill, let's track ice a little bit. Did you grow up upstate New York? Did you grow up skiing?
Yeah, I grew up in Western New York State, near Rochester, New York,
Oh,
and I was part of the ski club in the fifth grade. So
nice.
I took the school bus to my local ski hill and, did that program, which is pretty typical at resorts like that. And that's how I got started. It was really fun.
And then you've been in the ski industry 30 years? Nearly 30.
Almost, yeah. I started in 1996, and in fact, I started at that same ski hill that I took the bus. It was called
Did you?
Bristol Mountain in New York State, and I started as director of sales and marketing. But at ski areas like that, you do
Yeah, of
everything.
course.
So
Of course.
I got to do everything.
Um, yeah, so let's just dive right into it.
Yeah.
You've been around, you've seen it. I started covering Vail Resorts in 1996 when you got into it, 1997. The Ralston deal, and
Yeah.
before it went public, George Gillette back in the day, then Adam Aaron. Um, Much different industry back then. And I would argue that the past 10 years, have been the most transformative in the history of the industry. And when I think of skiing, I think metal edges, plastic boots, and the Epic Pass. That's like some of the most influential things that have happened to skiing. So we're going to talk a little bit about the Epic Pass. You guys are coming up on 2.5 million of those units, generating somewhere close to $1 billion a year on pass sales, and it's coming in months that used to be zero revenue. Um, Completely transformed the way this business operates, stability of the business. It's drawn in, Wall Street investor. The type. It's provided the stability that has enabled resort operators across the spectrum to be able to go to their bank and say, "Hey, I need a loan for a chairlift," and they used to be like, "Yeah, we're not doing that. You got to go to the special bank." And so, that old to skiers, and now, it's a proven stable market, but you were there, in the days before, and now, what you guys are seeing right now. You got a competitor out there offering similar passes. I think it was 2019 that we saw season pass use exceed day lift tickets and other lift, multi-day lift tickets. So really driving this advanced purchase option, this subscription model sort of thing. But um, talk about that $569 pass in '08. You were in snowshoe back then.
Yep.
What, you know, describe the trajectory and the sort of narrative arc of that pass and how it's sort of influenced this industry.
Yeah, I think there's probably a couple other innovations besides the three you mentioned that have helped propel
That was,
snowboarding. I would pick snowboarding.
yeah, perfect.
Yeah. But I'm really happy you put the Epic Pass in such in the top three. When I was in Snowshoe Mountain, I was the president of Snowshoe Mountain in 2008 when the pass came out, and I was a competitor. I worked for Inch West
Yep.
at the time, and I wasn't sure what to make of it. I wasn't sure what it would do. I was a little skeptical. I was probably a lot like many folks in the industry at the time thinking about, oh my gosh, the cannibalization and the yield of daily lift tickets and the cannibalization of this high price. Because remember the season's pass price at any resort at that time was
$1,700.
yeah $1,500,
Yeah.
$1,200, you name it, and all of a sudden you're taking all this money off the table. Big risk and bold innovation that Vail Resorts did at that time. So I was honestly skeptical. Of course, I've been converted over time. So, because for all the reasons you mentioned, it's been just an innovation that's transformed the industry. It's really met the needs of people who love to ski. It's made it more affordable. We've created a network of resorts, so there's so much optionality, especially here in Colorado. You can pick one of five resorts and use six if you count Telluride as a partner, and use your Epic Pass, and you can ski. I heard you say on one of your podcasts that you did that you can ski half a day. You're not
Yeah.
you can ski part of a day, you can ski an hour, you can do and you can mold kind of your day around how you want to ski. And so it's transformed everything. And in terms of stability for the business, I think you're right. In those days, there were some companies that had started to consolidate the ski industry, American Ski Company and Interwest, of course, and others, and didn't quite, go very well.
Well,
Um,
we have to remember those were big real estate
big
plays.
real estate. Yeah.
And that's one of the most influential factors of the Epic Pass is it turned this industry away from. Well, I mean, we were really heading towards what Hal Clifford wrote the book Downhill Slide. It was all about villages. It was all about condo sales. It was giant amounts of money in a day. Selling $500 million worth of condos in copper in an hour, sort of thing. And you're like, whoa, this is a different business.
Yeah.
And with that pass, what do you guys spend? $209 million this year on capital improvements. I mean, these are crazy numbers that are going back into ski hills.
Yeah, and back then, before you had the stability of this revenue stream, it was the risk is in the weather,
Yeah,
and you'd wait until the weather came, and if the weather was good, you went skiing. If it didn't, you didn't. And so every resort operator was at the more of the mercy of the weather than we are today because of this stability model that we've created. And so basically, what we're saying to guests is, hey, look, we're going to give you a smoking deal on your ski access, whether it's a 1 day Epic Pass or the full unlimited Epic Pass. And all you've got to do is share the risk and what the season's going to look like with us.
right.
It doesn't, and plan ahead a little bit. And if you do those things, you're going to get the best deal in 20 years skiing. And it's given us the stability to invest, like you said, not only in infrastructure, but also our employees. You saw last year, we invested $175 million in our compensation to our employees. That doesn't happen if we don't sell Epic passes.
Yeah. And what surprised you? Like, all right, what time did you say, was it after the first year or the first 5 years that did you say like, oh my God, this is legit. We need to be part of this.
Yeah, so I joined Vail Resorts in
2010.
2010.
North Star.
North Star. I joined when we bought North Star. It was the first resort we had purchased in, gosh, 8 or 9 years. It was our sixth resort.
Private land too.
Yeah, private land. And so they hired me from outside the company, which I am eternally grateful for. I was the last person to get hired by Vail Resorts to run a resort that didn't come
Did
through
come from
acquisition,
inside. Yeah.
that didn't come from inside until we just hired Amy Oran and North Star to run North Star for us. So that was 13 years. So they hired me in 2010, and clearly I was on board with the Bass program at that point. But even before then, I wanted to come work at Vail Resorts because I saw the innovation, I saw the investment in leadership, I saw the investment in the mountains, and I wanted to be on a winning team.
Yeah. And now we got a competitor out there, and you're starting to see changing demographics and trends. And obviously, you guys are what you're going to top 20 million visits across your network, somewhere around you're at 19, I guess, last year. So, chances are you'll get over 20. Knock on wood with good weather, but this increased visitation, and you're seeing talk a little bit about the change in visitation. Like I've heard you guys say you're seeing the biggest growth in like weekday and non-holiday, whereas it used to be, you know, and again back to the way we ski. Like
Yeah.
if you ever go to Beaver Creek at 1 o'clock or at 12:55. There's about 20 cars parked out in the front of that frontage road waiting for the 1 o'clock free parking, and I'm usually in it. That's you go into the free parking, and then you. So it's like everybody skis differently. If you're buying a day lift ticket,
Yeah.
it's showing up at 1 o'clock. So
Yeah.
kind of what are you seeing in terms of how it's changing a little skier behavior?
A couple of things. We have, because we introduced innovation like Epic Mix, we have a lot of data. So we use a lot of data. I can talk about how we use data to help make lift lines shorter and things like that, parking better. And um, you know, I was surprised when I looked at some data at a resort that showed the peak time of the average time of the first scan of their pass for the day. It was like 11 o'clock.
Sure.
I would have thought it would have been, 9 o'clock or 9:30. And so people are, because they don't have that pressure to get that, I got to get 40 runs in, I got to get 30 runs in, I got to get X amount of vertical. I think people are approaching their day more holistically, maybe a little more like a European model where, hey, I'm going to take a little longer lunch. I'm going to do, something later in the day that and those sorts of things. You mentioned midweek skiing, COVID for sure changed the behaviors
Yeah, yeah.
of people skiing. And the ski industry has been trying since I've been in it to get people to ski off peak, midweek, non-holiday, and
The
maybe
holy grail.
yeah,
That's it.
yeah, it has been, and maybe COVID did it. People started to they had flexibility. They could work from home. They were remote. They could travel at times. Their kids weren't in school.
Yeah.
They could move their kids and work remote. Have their kids do school remotely. And so all of a sudden, we saw these weeks be kind of busy that were never busy before. And that trend, I thought, well, is that gonna revert back to pre-COVID type behavior? And it is a little bit, but not really.
Mm.
The second thing, I think you've mentioned this before in some materials that you've written about or talked about, is people have moved to town. If you're a software engineer in San Francisco and you can work remotely,
Sure.
maybe you're going to move to Breckenridge, or maybe you move to Lake Tahoe or something. And we certainly have seen that. And those folks can ski, especially if they're companies on the Eastern time zone or
Yeah.
Pacific time zone. They
Punching
can,
out at
yeah,
one or
they can
something. Yeah.
they can go ski and get out on the hill. So we've seen like folks, be more flexible, take advantage of the network, try to ski and ride off peak, and get more value for the pass.
Sure. And we've seen with these changing demographics and these changing, residential patterns, especially, um, increasing pressures on some of these smaller communities, and that's something that you guys have, you know, elevated on your priority list of things that need maybe a little work. And looking at your relationship with communities, and you talked about COVID. One thing with COVID is we all got in our cars and drove by ourselves. And when you hear a lot of communities talking about, oh my God, we're being overrun by ski people, they're talking about the cars.
Yeah.
That's generally it's the cars, it's the traffic on 70, it's the traffic into Breck, it's parking, it's crossing the parking lot. There's Cars are a big deal, and they're a challenge for every resort operator. But how are you guys kind of working with communities that are saying like, "Yo, tap the brakes. Like, we don't need unlimited ski passes in Breckenridge when we're at whatever, record-setting Saturdays." And there was always a picture of a long line
Yeah.
that usually only lasts about 10 minutes. Every long line goes away pretty quick with a
Yeah.
high-speed chairlift. So it's not like that line is sitting there all day long. But kind of riff a little bit about just the impacts on communities that have grown in with this pass and with this increased visitation and with these record-setting traffic patterns that we're seeing.
Yeah.
And cars.
Yeah. I think you called out a few really important things. First of all, all those passes that you talked about us selling, those aren't all like new people coming to the
Yeah, yeah,
mountain.
exactly.
They're just accessing the mountain a different way and with a more flexible, affordable, product to access the mountain. But there's some new for sure. The car thing is real, and the one per car is real during COVID, absolutely. And some things. Well, let me back up. We're usually the biggest employer in these small communities, and so and I've been a COO of resorts in Park City and in North Lake Tahoe and in Snowshoe, West Virginia, where we were the biggest employer in the county. And so everyone has an interest in how you do. And so it's incredibly important that we're engaged in the ecosystem, and the ecosystem is full, right? A full quality of life, including, is the grocery store big enough? How's the school, housing, childcare, all that. We have a voice and a role to play in all that stuff. And sometimes we're at odds with our communities because of our impact that we can have, because we are the largest employer, and also we're the largest contributor in many cases to the quality of life. People move there because skiing and being outdoors, and so people care about what we do and how we do it, and how we execute. They care about their experience on the hill. So it's important that we're engaged in all that stuff, and sometimes it goes really well and we're totally aligned, and sometimes we have disagreements about what's the right thing, or even what's the cause. And on the parking thing, it's interesting because there's things that people who live in the communities um, don't like very much, but they work to help with traffic. Like, for instance, paid parking and reservations for parking. we implemented that at Park City this last winter,
Right.
and I ran Park City Mountain for 5 years, so intimately familiar with that community. And man, the outcry was incredible, right? I can't believe you're doing that. I can't believe you're doing that. I even got an email from a person who told me how wrong we were, and how this is the only time in my whole career I've gotten an email like this. He told us how wrong we were. He told us how terrible it was going to be, and he was going to never come to our resort. And literally after Christmas, same person sent me an email saying, "You were right. I was wrong.
Good for him.
You guys are doing it. Only one. You guys are doing a great job, and thank you for doing this. Please don't take it away." And it was, we're not in the paid parking business to make money. We're in the paid parking business to meter traffic, and
Yeah.
in that Park City example, carpooling went to over. I think this number is right. Over 40% of the cars were carpoolers, and before that, it was probably 5%.
Yeah.
So and because we let carpoolers park for free, I left that important detail out. So
Yeah.
if you carpool, it's free. And if you have a reservation, you don't have to get there at 7 in the morning because you're worried about not getting a parking spot,
Right.
which is what causes the congestion on the road on the way in because everybody's trying to get there at once. Well, if I have a reservation, I know I have a spot, I'll get there at 9. And it metered out the traffic and it worked. I wouldn't say it's perfect. I'm not here to say it's perfect, but it worked. And the town government is super pleased. It was one of the biggest issues that they had there.
Sure.
And we've had similar collaboration in Breckenridge and other places where we've done this sort of thing. And so, um, it works, but that's what it means to, maybe we could have said to the community, "Hey, that's your problem, the parking. We're just here to operate a ski hill." But we have to engage and on all the issues, even if we sometimes have differing opinions.
I think one of the more interesting aspects of that level of engagement from you guys is letting your workers go back to mountain towns. You used to have a lot of, back in the day when you guys set up shop, Rob first moved everything down to Broomfield. It was all hands on deck at Broomfield. Yeah, build that big old building there on 36. And now, you're letting folks work in any state that you have operations. Are you seeing that as, because that means you're like executives are coaching soccer and hockey and they're going to church and they're,
Yeah.
like they're part of the community. And that isn't a level of engagement that maybe was missing when you moved a lot of those, kind of middle managers and folks down to Metro Denver.
Yeah, I think, we've certainly been, you know, benefited from having this flexible remote work. It's one of the real silver linings to the COVID
Sure.
pandemic, where we've been able to allow our employees to basically work remotely, as long as we have an operation in that state. So that opens the playing field pretty wide. And so some folks have chosen to move into mountain towns for sure to work, and others have. We've been able to recruit amazing talent from metro areas
Yeah.
that wouldn't otherwise move to Colorado. Let's say, maybe they don't want to live here. Although none of us can probably understand that, that that some people don't, but they can still work for us,
Sure.
which is great. But yeah, I think on the relationship front, the people that there's the company is people. The company is people. A lot of people like to talk about Vail Resorts as if it's not made up of people. Some of the hardest skiers I know are executives in our company. They ski a lot and they're in the mountains a ton. And the people that run our resorts are the company. There's not a difference, between those folks and the people in Broomfield or those folks and me, for instance. And those are the neighbors. Those are the people that are coaching soccer and
Yeah.
baseball and volunteering for nonprofits and all that stuff. So, yeah, I think having more of our employees in mountain towns certainly is helpful. But we already have thousands of
Yeah, of
employees
course.
in our mountain towns, and they're great representatives of the company.
Yeah. And one of the challenges, kind of combined pass and community investment. You guys have directed a bunch of money towards housing, which you need, and every mountain town needs, and every resort operator needs. And we had 10 years of maybe not paying enough attention to the housing in the mountain towns, and they turned around and bit everybody on the ass there for, during COVID with the prices doubling and everything like that. Now it's incredibly expensive to build. It's incredibly hard to raise the issue of density in these mountain towns. Talk a little bit about your work with housing and maybe how that ties into some of the revenue you're getting from passives. Like that's you got the money there to make some pretty sizable investments in.
Yeah, the money and the ability to invest in housing is not our limiting factor to build housing in our communities. It says, I think you mentioned it's approvals, it's land, it's willing, government entities that want to help. We've had great success. We just opened over 400 new beds in Park City.
Yeah,
We have Wintergreen in Summit County. We've done some good projects in Summit County with partners. We've got a Whistler project that we're starting to work on that'll come out of the ground. And so it's not like it is one of those things when people say, well, why can't you just build housing? You just with saying the intention of I want to build housing, even if you own the land, you're talking 3 to 5 years to
yeah,
get it approved, and then who knows what happens. And so it's challenging, it's complicated. Every mountain town is wrestling with it. Every mountain town and all the dynamics of which I'm not an expert in, but we've all heard people talk about the second home. I mentioned the COVID folks moving in as second, who used to be second homeowners. Now they moved in. Well, that house used to be rented to somebody. All that's happening. And so we're absolutely committed to housing and trying to build or release as much as we can for the folks that need it.
yeah. It's when you talk to folks in mountain towns, they talk about parking on Saturdays and
Housing. Yeah.
and the cost of houses and stuff.
Yeah. And our employees, like I said, are part of the community, and I think the community is better when our employees are part of the community. And having employees be able to be in the grocery store and go to community functions and instead of having to drive an hour.
Yeah, not spending an hour on a bus or in a car.
Yeah, and then it's also traffic and it's also climate impacts and
Yeah,
all that. And so yeah, having our employees in the community, that's what makes these communities vibrant. When you go on vacation, do you ever say where do the tourists go, or do you say where do the locals go?
yeah,
And because people want to live, they want a part of that lifestyle, they want
yeah,
to understand it. And so yeah, we want to make sure our employees are having an experience of a lifetime too, so that they can deliver that for our guests.
yeah. Reminds me when Mount Village built that gondola,
Yeah.
and they're like, "We are going to pull all those Telluride vacationers up to our brand new, shiny, awesome village, work the other way." And all of a sudden, Mount Village is like, "Oh my God, there's nobody wants to spend time up here. Like brand new restaurants and brand new bars." Um, so yeah, you talked about what you just mentioned right there. Got some questions online too, folks talking about climate change.
Yeah.
Obviously, one of the more formidable challenges facing the ski industry as a whole, and especially in Colorado, where it's such a big deal.
Yeah.
You guys have an aggressive net zero plan to hit some sustainability goals by 2030. Talk about those real quick. Talk about and then, well, let's get into what you're doing to hit those net zero goals. But then I want to talk about advocacy, kind of
Yeah.
taking it to the next step.
Yeah. So um, we set very aggressive net zero goals. So zero waste to landfill, uh, zero uh, net energy use by 2030, and zero impacts on the forest. So net impacts. So there's offsets to some of that. And when we set that intention, pretty aggressive and bold. One of the first companies, level
Yeah,
travel and leisure companies, to do it. But we've put the resources into it. We have a great leader, Kate Wilson, who runs it for us. When we do our employee survey, one of the things that our employees are most passionate about is sustainability. And so and we are stewards of some of the most spectacular places on the planet. So there's a lot of reasons why it's important for us to lead in this space and to take really decisive action. And I would say in the early days, our stance was we're going to take care of our own house. Like we're going to do the best we can for us and maybe be a little less on the advocacy side. Well, that pendulum for us is swinging. We become a lot more active in the advocacy side. But before I go there, I'm really proud of what we've done. When we set that commitment to zero goal for 2030, we also committed to holding ourselves accountable with an annual report, right? So there's an annual report that basically says what we did, how we're doing, what's working, what's not working. And so anyone who's interested can pull that up and see. So it's not like we threw this out there and then like, okay, hope nobody notices that we did it. We're doing the work. And in fact, last year in Colorado, we diverted over 700,000 pounds of waste to landfill because of the practices that we're doing. We reduced it by over 700,000 pounds. And so we also achieved our 100% net energy neutrality last year. And so we're ahead of our plan. We have 50, so the goal is to 2030. In many of the categories, we're ahead of our, kind of halfway point goals that we had for ourselves. And so I'm really proud about it. Our team is super engaged. They really, think about the diverting waste from a landfill. When I go up to the mountain on the holidays, you may see me behind a busing station sorting trash and helping out with the team. And it's not a great job. It's not like a great job. And it's dirty, it's messy, and but it's part of how we do this. If you can sort the trash properly, you can get it out of the landfill. And we've done active composting programs and all that. And so it's not a great job, but you know what? Our employees want to do it. They want to do it and they love doing it because it's the right thing to do, and they're excited about us making progress on this goal. So our team is really energized and really making great progress. On the advocacy front, Kate, who I mentioned, is leading a group of collaborators from the leading mountain resort companies.
Yeah.
So us, Alterra, Boyne, and Powder, and convening that group to, lobby, write letters, share best practices. We think about sustainability and climate change a lot like we do safety. If we discover something that will help make people safer, we're going to share it with the industry. And if we find something that's going to help people do better and perform better in terms of protecting our environment and insulating us from climate change, we're going to share that. And that's what Kate's been able to do with this group. And so we work with NSAA, we work with that group, we work with our legislature, and then legislators. And then this year, for the first time ever, we hired a chief public affairs officer, and he's extremely gifted and experienced in government relations and affairs. And so he'll be taking a leading role for us as we engage with our representatives.
Is this Kenny?
Kenny,
Yeah,
yeah, Kenny Thompson.
Kenny Thompson. Yeah, heard a lot about it.
Yeah.
And what does that look like? Because I remember back in the day, somebody'd be like, "Oh my gosh, Vail Resorts, gave money to this politician," and then I'd look and I'd be like, "And you also gave money to their opponent." So it was like, you guys, your advocacy was very even-handed. You're like, "I'm gonna give to both sides. They'll, if we ever need favors, I'll just whatever. I don't know how it works, but so it seems like it was very apolitical. And this climate advocacy kind of asks you to pick a side, and that's something that this industry traditionally hasn't done. Is that a challenge when you have to be like, okay, we need to lean on this senator for this vote that's coming up on this climate bill and this climate policy, and you're out there knocking on that door into the Capitol building. Like, how's that work?
Yeah, it's first of all, I think we have great relationships with the folks that represent us. They like our industry. It's
There's a ski area caucus in DC, right?
yeah, there is. Yeah, there is. In fact, the National Skiers Association just did a lobbying trip a couple weeks ago
Oh, okay.
to DC. I didn't go on that trip, but and you're right. There's politicians of all different stripes that you have to talk to and try to get things done. There's things we want to get done on climate, and we're clearly not playing both sides on that issue. I think there's things we want to get done on public lands issues. There's things we want to get done on immigration, to help with workforce development. And so, we approach our advocacy around, things that the industry generally aligns around. I don't really find ourselves ever at opposite ends of the spectrum. Our interests usually align pretty well.
Yeah, Shred Act. You guys
Shred Act, yeah, that's a great example. Like that would be fantastic for the White
especially
River.
for Colorado.
Yeah,
White
the
River.
White River National
Yeah.
Forest is a gem, and Scott, who's the forest supervisor, is I don't know, I think he's the best in the U.S. Forest Service. And so to be able to have a partner like that and to be
He's
able
so
to,
good. I wouldn't be surprised to see him sucked up into some big brass position up there, which would be a loss for White River.
It would, and yeah, I mean he's super talented,
Yeah, really.
and I really appreciate working with him. He's a great partner to have. Even again, like I talked about community, sometimes we might not see the issue the same way, but he's an amazing partner. And so the Shred Act would give him and his team more resources. That
Almost 2x.
yeah, that helps generate. They help do all the all the trail maintenance, all the NEPA reviews, all the things that have to happen on the White River that we think is amazing. And yeah, if we can ever get something passed, that would be great.
Sure.
And we've been on the doorstep of having that passed numerous times.
All right, a little bit on the future. One of the things we see in addition to climate challenges, obviously, is inclusivity and diversity in the ski world. Seeing that, what is it, 69, 70% white number hasn't moved. Like, man, that number is just stuck right there. And as well as, older folks bowing out and getting younger people in. One of the challenges that you hear, the SIA just had their participation report and they asked some core skiers, why are you not coming back? And they say cost. And obviously part of the strategy, overarching strategy for you guys is, you really want them playing ahead. You don't want them to go buy I think your lift ticket's gonna be close to $300 this year. So it's like that that's a hurdle for someone who's like, hey, let's go skiing this weekend, sort of thing, and those folks are typically not the core type of planners that think ahead and are willing to spend $900 on a pass or whatever. So talk a little bit about the pass product, which works really well for people like me. But then it's a challenge for someone who's like maybe just wanting to dip a toe and take a test, and that those things seem really hard to balance.
Yeah, I think I've heard that too, and I think there's two different issues. One, there's just the walk up ticket rate at destination mountain resorts, which is at all of them has gone up quite a bit as the passes have emerged. I think the thing that we think about is how to get kids in the sport, how to get more diverse population into the sport, and we're lucky in that we have 37 resorts in North America.
Yeah.
We have 29 resorts that are near metro areas, and so you think about if you're a family in Chicago and you want to think you might want to learn how to ski, you're probably not going to Vail and paying $300 a ticket or two, whatever, and ski. You're going to probably go to your local mountain. We're the local mountain. And we have tons of programs, just like the program I mentioned where I got on a school bus as a kid. We have tons of programs like that. We at those mountains. That's the mission of those mountains. The mission of those mountains is to create skiers and riders for the future. And the great news is they're next to these diverse populations. And so our job is to make sure we get those folks there. Our job, and it's affordable. And our job is to make sure we get those folks there, and that especially for folks of diverse backgrounds, that they feel like it's a place for them. It's not even enough to be welcoming. I used to think I was probably not a little naive, like we welcome everybody. But you know what? We don't really welcome everybody. We don't, right? If you ski in jeans, you don't feel that welcome. And if you're in a pizza pie, you don't feel that welcome. And that has to change, in our industry. It really does. It has to change. And I think, but it's not even enough to feel welcome. It needs to be like, this place is for me. Like, you knew I was coming. You modified the experience or anticipated I was coming, and I feel like it's a place for me. And honestly, we're not there yet. We're not there yet. We had the opportunity to host the 50th anniversary of the National Brotherhood of Skiers
Yeah,
at
super
Vail
fun.
this year. It was amazing.
The most fun group that goes skiing
Yeah.
ever.
Yeah, and it was as we planned that event, we met with Henry and his team many times, and the backdrop of that event was they had been in Vail in the '90s, and they didn't come back, and they didn't come back because, and I don't want to put words in Henry's mouth, but uh, they didn't come back because they didn't feel welcome. They
I
didn't.
was cooking at the Westin
Oh,
when
you
they
were?
came in the 90s. Yeah, 92. That was so much fun.
Yeah,
I'm like, dude, these people are
yeah,
bringing it back to the roots of skiing.
yeah, and we want we don't want them just to feel welcome when they're having a 50th anniversary event. We want them to know it's for them. That place is for them. It's their place too. And our industry is not good at that. Our
Our,
industry is good at making fun of beginners. Our
your
industry,
demographic, yeah, like that's ingrained in skiing.
yeah,
Like good skiers make fun of bad skiers.
yeah,
And now they put them on the internet with pictures of them,
right.
make fun of them for
Or
wearing
they carry their
helmet backwards, and like stuff like that. And I'm like, that is not helping. You're not doing a Jerry the Day business.
yeah.
Go away.
We're just not. It's not helping if you can't talk about inclusion and having more diverse skiing and changing this mix.
Right.
And by the way, it's important for the future of our sport.
It
The
is.
future of our sport is inclusion because think about it. The number one, uh, when someone enters the sport, they're the biggest group of people that entering the sport are kids. Well, in the United States, the majority of kids are non-white, or they will be soon. And yet, we've got a sport that is very white and very male. The good news, for us is that we've been working at this for a while, and long way to go on the diversity front. Just the gender diversity piece, we've been leading the way,
Yeah,
for decades.
hands down.
And in our Rocky Mountain, in our Colorado resorts, 3 of the 5 COOs are women. Of our 10 destination resorts, 5 are women. Our board of directors is 50-50 uh, diverse. So and our executive committee is 40% diverse. So, and I think Kirsten's one of the only travel and leisure CEOs in the whole country. And so we've made progress.
Yeah.
And there's all sorts of data around, women take the majority of the beginner lessons, and they also the majority of people who don't come back. So not only do we have a racial diversity issue, but we have a gender diversity issue too in our sport.
And a retention issue.
Yeah.
I was there, and Michael Berry at NSAA, whatever, 20 years ago, said we need to retain more skiers. Let's aim for 15%. And the needle's not moving. Like, skiing's hard, though.
Yeah.
It's a challenge. And it's pain. And, it's.
Yeah. I mean, all the brochures show sun and powder and it's cold. But no, I'm thankful. I mean, I am so thankful people take vacations to ski mountains. I wouldn't be able to have the job I have that I love so much. And the one thing I forgot to mention is in Colorado specifically, for families that want to start skiing, we have Epic School Kids Pass. So again, instead of going up and buying a ticket, you can sign up now for a free pass, get 4 visits to 5 resorts in Colorado. You get a lesson, you get some equipment. And so and that's kindergarten through 5th grade. So if you've got a bunch of kids that are little, you can get started, pretty inexpensively.
Yeah, and Ski Country, who you're not a part of,
Yeah.
but their 5th, 6th grade passport program does the same thing. That's a fun way for a parent to get around. Like,
Yeah.
I remember we traveled all over the state, tried to hit all of them just about when we
Right.
get to 6th grade. It's pretty fun.
Yeah.
It's an unusual program, and it's been mirrored now across. But when Ski Country started, and then you guys started that, it was among the first, and that's a good way to do it. But then you still got your parents paying $300 a day to go ski.
They got to get their Epic Day Pass. That's all. They just got to get their Epic Day
plan
Pass.
ahead.
Plan ahead.
And innovations to improve the experience. You guys, like you said, you've put $209 million into ski hills. Incredible new chairlifts, restaurants, and it's very ski experiences. Never been better, you could argue. Skiing's had a technology problem for a long, long time. Like I still go to resorts sometimes up in British Columbia where they're punching holes in your lifting. And this year you're going to have this phone app, which you're going to try out. You're going to be doing it in Vail Beef Creek, right? That's my home.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting to see how that works. One of the biggest problems I've had with anything phone related is that it kills my phone.
Yeah.
And I don't like that, so I don't use it.
Yeah.
So it'd be interesting to see how that unfolds. But riff a little bit, and I think some of this comes from, the COVID with the reservations really turbocharged tech. Like you guys had millions of people in a waiting room when you launch reservations. Like,
Right.
I'm like, dude, Ticketmaster needs to take a page from Vail Resorts. So you guys built that from the ground up. You
Yeah.
didn't take existing tech. Um, Talk a little bit about, how technology is moving, is progressing quickly in some of these resorts. Ski up and get your
Yeah.
chicken fingers without ever taking your wallet out, sort of thing, or your skis off.
Yeah. I think, we're going to launch two really exciting technology programs this year. And you mentioned one of them, which is the app, and part of that is the mobile pass. So you're going to be able to use your phone as a lift ticket through Bluetooth Low Energy, which is we've been testing battery life, and it depends on the age of your phone and how your phone does in cold. But for the most part, it doesn't drain your battery. It's not like a normal app that has,
Always running.
sometimes GPS or some of that stuff that runs your battery down. But what we're really trying to do with technology is take friction out of the system. What do we know? We know people love to ski, but there's a lot of things you have to do to get ready to go ski that you don't love. Waiting in a ticket line, waiting in any line,
Yeah.
but lift line at least is related to skiing. Some of the other lines, so we're using automation and technology to try to streamline that. We're also trying to use technology in the app. There'll be predictive wait times for chairlifts. So because we've got this technology from Epic Mix from in the past, we can see people on the mountain. We can see the wait times at all the lifts that have the gantries, and you can go on the app and you can say, "Oh, here I am standing at this part of the mountain. I want to go over there, but wait a minute, that looks like a 10-minute wait. That one right over there is a 1-minute wait. Let's go over there." And people will do that sort of thing. So you'll have that and that functionality in the app. And so our idea is that we're going to use technology to make the experience better, to enable you to make good choices about how to access the mountain. And we've all done it before, right? You make a right turn, you go down the lift and you see this line, you're like, I'm stuck. I made the wrong turn. But if you had that information at the top of that, you would have gone somewhere else. And that's what we're trying to do. And it's going to work. I think the ski industry has been slow in technology because we just don't have the scale. Like why wouldn't a Microsoft or anybody else develop applications for the ski industry? It's because there's 509 ski areas in the
Yeah.
United States, and so most of the software that all these ski areas are run on was invented by a really talented, smart person in a garage or a company. And so it doesn't have that. Why are I used to say this to our IT team all the time? I want to shop online and be like Amazon, and they're like, yeah, well, there's some things you have to understand about our industry and how it works in order to get technology done. And so with our scale, we're very well, and our the way we operate the company, we're better suited than anybody to make
Sure.
investments in technology to run it out to the network and have this impact on customers and the guest experience in our resort. So yeah, we've made a lot of investments in technology over the years. I'm really excited about what we're going to do coming up, and I think just like you talked about the punching holes, like pretty soon, out in the future, not accessing a lift on your phone will feel just as weird.
Yeah, and a lot of that came out of, the COVID and the reservations and forcing real technology, advancements. Whereas in the past, if you're choosing between a new chairlift or an upgraded text reservation system,
Right.
it's just one of those is not very sexy, and you're
Yeah.
just not going to go with that. So, yeah, I think we're seeing, the carpool app sort of
Yeah.
things that could really change the way we park.
Yep.
And some of your smart parking stuff, again, back to cars, but that's,
But that's what I was just saying about software because everybody parks all over the planet. There's a lot of software for that. So
yeah,
we're leveraging that for sure, whether
yeah,
it's, Waze and things like
yeah,
that. Like we know we want to take the friction out of the whole arrival process. We focus on it. We have this data. So we can buy or lease technology that gives us insights to help us manage marketing better. And that stuff is scaled already
yeah.
globally. So that's like easy. That's easy stuff.
And you guys are limiting lift ticket sales again this year.
We are, yeah.
Did you do that at all? They're like, did did you have to limit ticket sales last year anywhere? I think I checked in with you on it. I don't think you did it in Colorado.
That's a good question. I'm not sure if
I'm
we
not
did.
sure either.
I'm not sure if we did in Colorado or not. And I think we're getting to the point where pass sales is the majority of our visitation, and so you know yeah, so we do limit sales so that you get that perfect powder day and you get the crowd going. And like, yeah, we'll limit sales on those days.
And you could see that coming thanks to open snow. Be like, all
There
right,
you go. Plug for open snow. There you go.
Saturday's gonna be a busy one. Yeah, that's just I would argue that what happened during COVID were, from 2020, March 2020, when you guys shut down early, hell of a thing. Um, the biggest transformation in the ski industry. Like you guys have come around with all these, different ways of staffing and, working with employees and growing, you know, a more robust relationships with your communities and your customers. When you look back and say it's you're going to retire and you're going to write a book about what you know the evolution and the arc of the ski industry, what would be the top three chapters on what you learned out of the pandemic?
Oh, the pandemic. Um, we the pandemic, uh, you know, a couple things. One, having to shut down a ski resort or a whole ski resort company, and then by kind of default, the whole industry
In a day,
in a day is pretty challenging.
getting
And
all your employees out of that housing. There's kids
you
living
know,
6 deep in these
yeah, and
condos.
getting folks back to their like we have international staff trying to get them back to their countries when the borders were closed, and that was really challenging. But
challenging.
oh my god, yeah. But the what I would say is I've never been prouder. It was the right thing. It was the right thing to do. It was the right thing to do for our communities and our guests and our employees. And it really um, provided an opportunity to kind of put the things we talked about being values into action and do the right thing and try to get things done. I don't know. I think, from a business perspective, what did we learn? Well, we learned we had a lot of data that we could use to help make the guest experience better. We realized that we had to operate the next year on limited capacity on chairlifts, limited capacity in restaurants, um, and uh, and so we had to use the data we had to try to model out, well, how would that look? And all of a sudden we saw this data and we realized, oh my gosh, even in a normal circumstance, we can use that data to make the operations better. For instance, we were having to load chairs at 50%. Well,
Remember it well.
and so if you're loading a chair at 50%, let's say that chair was designed for 2,400 people per hour, but really, what were you really getting out of that chair? Nobody's getting 2,400 people per hour out of a chair, even if it's designed that way. So all of a sudden, you're finding out, oh, we're getting 1,600 people per hour out of a chair. Well, first of all, we're not going to do that under COVID. So is that going to be 800 or could we get 1,000? And then the second thing is when we get back to post COVID, how do we get more than 1,600 people? Because or 1,800 people per hour, because if that was closer to 2,400, that lift line could go down. And so we implemented that later, and so we've been able.
It's like your red coats in the line. Was that it? Like,
Yeah, well, we redesigned the mazes. We had an industrial
Yeah.
engineer look at it. We had all this data that we have, and so we reduced last year. We reduced our 10-minute wait times on the existing lift structure by 30% on the resorts that we were applying this.
Oh wow.
And measure it, and that's the equivalent of 4 new quad chairlifts across the network. And so that was data that we were able to harness to put into operation to help make the guest experience better. And so we can measure lift line weights. We know how many people per hour we're getting on the chair. We know why I'll give you an example. I used to think that running a chairlift, you bought a new chairlift, cost millions of dollars. You should run that thing as what it was designed to run as fast as you can all the time. I did. I thought that for a long time. Well, I started to get this data and realized that that's bad. The reason why it's bad is depending on the skill level of the skiers, they might be a lot more slows and stops on that lift because
Coming
because
around quick.
people are falling, or they're falling on the ramp, or they're not loading, or they're not getting on the load board right. So you could actually get higher people per hour capacity out of that lift by slowing it down. I also learned that the lift chair interval, between the two chairs as you're loading, yeah, there's an optimal lift chair that
Yeah,
you
there
need to
is.
have. And so
Even on a
sometimes,
detachable chair.
yeah, even on a detachable, and sometimes lift operator or ski operators are tempted to, like, when they're going to buy a new lift, just cram as much capacity as they can. Well, there's a lot of ways to get capacity on the lift. Speed, chair intervals are two of them. Size of chair is the third. And so at the end of the day, if the you've crammed all this capacity in, but you've made the chair interval 5 seconds, you're going to be slowing that chairlift down a ton. You're not even going to get close to the design capacity. If you have it back 7 or 8 seconds,
Oh,
you're going to
wow.
probably be fine. And so, there's like, so we learned a lot. We learned a lot
Do you
about it.
still see many resorts? I saw Peter at Lift Block saying more resorts are going with the moving carpet when you load up. You guys like those? What do you have it at two?
We've got a bunch of them. We pulled a couple of them out too. We pulled the one out of Breckenridge.
Those can be
We pulled it out of
people
Vail.
wreckers.
Yeah,
Like people get
in
off.
Europe, Europe's way ahead of us on the technology like
Yeah.
this. And so, um, where they work, this has been my experience. They really work on fixed grip lifts uh, that serve advanced skiers and riders. So at Park City, we had a fixed grip triple that served the train park,
Uh-huh.
and we had a loading carpet on that. And that worked like a charm.
Right.
The chair comes up and scoops you right off the carpet, and you could run that lift way faster than you could a normal fixed grip lift. I've struggled with them on detachable lifts. And there's a little lip. There's a little lip to get on it, and then it takes you up to this thing, and you stop, and there's anxiety, associated with that. And when people have anxiety, they get stiff, and when they get stiff, they fall. And so so if you end up slowing things down. There's a lot to, and so we've toyed with both. We've pulled some out.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
and because we have this data that I'm talking about, we've pulled some out, and we've been able to load better.
Oh, wow. That's so interesting. That's one thing I guess I knew you guys were doing that, but and a lot of it seems to be like your red coats. I see more of those guys on weekends at the busy hills, like really making sure people are stacked up six. Right there.
Yeah, I mean, the most important thing you can do to keep a lift line moving and short as possible is getting 6 people in the chair, 4 people in the chair, getting the most people in that chair. Second thing you can do is make sure lift doesn't stop. And of course, it's going to stop for safety reasons. Of course, we'll always do that, but you want to run it at a rate that makes it less likely it's going to slow or stop. And that depends on the skill level of the skier sometimes. Sometimes you run it slower, but you get better capacity.
Sure.
Counterintuitive. So I learned something. So
Yeah.
anyway, that was chapter one. I don't know what the other two chapters are.
Still let that one simmer for a little bit. That was a wild time. Yeah, we got a few minutes here if people have questions. If not, I'll keep going. Anybody want to jump in here?
Circling back on what Paris housing you see that there was works looking towards kind of like a statewide approach towards density or speeding up building timelines, where you still kind of begin to work out a by level together as the statewide together.
Yeah, question on housing and maybe your role and voice in pushing and advocating for increased density on a statewide level.
Yeah, we have, great relationships with the state and work closely on issues that are important to everybody, including housing. I'd say, ultimately the projects we're involved with are governed by the local governments. So that tends to be where our focus is. If there's a statewide program we can advocate for or become part of, we'll be all over it. And as you can see, it's just challenging to get housing done in these communities. So, there's some promising things. The Forest Service, we talked about them earlier. They've got, I think they're doing a project in Summit County with,
Dylan, yeah.
where they can lease land now for housing purposes, which is new. So if we found,
Elgibel too,
yeah,
in
yeah,
Eagle County or in Roaring Fork.
right, yeah, Roaring Fork, yeah. So if we had a chance to do some of that, we would lead in on that with the federal government too.
That's a good point, bringing up the similarities of one of the state's largest employers for housing needs and the statewide effort to, sort of expedite housing work in the high country. And I think we saw a high country community, tried that this year with some legislation, and the high country communities were not a fan. I don't know if Stabby's here, but those mountain towns were like, dude, you are not coming in with a statewide one size fits all policy and trying to build homes in our, and usurp our local zoning and all the carefully crafted things that we've
Right.
done for.
Yeah, that's the challenge, is that there's local control, and so
Which is good. It's
it's
not,
the framework we're in. Yeah,
yeah,
that's the framework we're in.
yeah. But yeah, that's interesting drawing those comparisons.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah. Well, maybe he should team up with Vail Resorts to see what you guys can do together. Um, yeah, that's a tricky one. Housing is a
Yeah, it's
like
one of the biggest needs in the community for sure.
yeah, and you're just seeing like, you know, communities just come out. There's an 8-unit affordable housing project in Glenwood that is now in its like third several hour council meeting. And you're like, wow, if you can't get 8 units, like how doomed are we? Like
Yeah.
we're just gonna be shipping these kids. I live in Eagle, and you got a whole bunch of workers that get on a bus every day on Eagle, and I'm looking at them and I'm saying, how is your ski life experience, kid, when you're sitting on that bus
Yeah.
for an hour plus a day?
Yeah. I lived in employee housing in Stratton, Vermont for a year, and I was a manager, and I still lived in employee housing, and a pretty junior level manager. It's like, and I wouldn't probably be here today if I didn't have that chance to do that. So it's near and dear to my heart, and it's an absolute necessity for our workforce and for our communities. I think they just add so much vibrancy, like I said earlier, to the communities.
There needs to be a shift in the entire way we talk about it. Like it's just so confrontational from the moment it starts to the throughout the entire process. It's divisive. It's mean. It's people say horrible things about their neighbors and each other, and both sides are right,
Yeah.
and it's still just this hard.
I
It
think
really
I think
is.
you said I think I heard you say there's never been a NIMBY identified.
No one's ever been like, I'm
No
a
one's ever
NIMBY.
admitted to being a NIMBY, but there are some. There are NIMBY forces out there,
It's an
unfortunately.
incredibly powerful force,
Yeah.
but no one is. They always say, "Oh, I'm not an NIMBY.
Right.
I just don't want it there. That's just the wrong place." And they're like, "Well, it's still your backyard, right?" Yeah. Um, but and those folks do have valid concerns. The whole idea of protecting, the values and culture that they've always wanted, the neighborhood character.
Yeah.
These are things that feel under attack in the mountain towns.
Yeah.
And mountain locals they feel like they're on their heels and they're fighting for, the last stand before, major, who knows what.
Yeah.
But, they feel these threats and they're acute. And I think we saw coming out of the pandemic in those couple of years when, labor crisis, the housing crisis, and record tourism numbers, and all these forces came into play, and it just felt like, wow, like
Yeah.
this is a perfect storm that is, engulfing our community, and I'm gonna come up and yell at everybody. It's tourists and everything, and that's something you can be talking to Connor here at lunch, about recreation and tourism and kind of balancing that. You don't want to overrun these natural places in these small communities, but at the same time, these are public lands that are owned by everybody.
Yeah.
And if you want to put, 1.5 million people onto 5,000 acres over the course of 4 months, if it's not a ski area, that land's gonna be savaged, right? Like if you're just gonna let 1.5 million people go camping and play and bike and hike and run and go wherever they want on 5,000 acres of public land, that public land is not gonna be very well protected. So
37 years now, the rights of nature. What are we doing in these areas to really look at that? And I don't know, I'm just throwing that out.
Yeah, I think I said it earlier, but we take our stewardship in these places, incredibly seriously. Our workforce, our guests, our communities, we all share the passion for why we're in those places. And so it's um, you know, the Forest Service and us have this great partnership in that we can do both. We can recreate in a place that we can take really good care of, and at the same time get people out in nature and protect our environment. I mean, if we don't, we won't have a place. And so there's always us trying to strike that balance of how to be the best stewards that we can be.
And maybe those ski areas are ways, avenues for a kid who first time to figure out their passion for the, spark and affection for playing outside and being outdoors. And they become the next person that votes for the, expansion of wilderness areas or things like that. They become those advocates. If they're inside and watching the screen the whole time, it's gonna be really hard to get them
Yeah.
fired up to go support natural laws and things like that protection. So
Yeah.
it is a balance. It's all a balance. All right, we got to run a tight ship here at this Sunfest. Everybody's off to their next one.
Thanks.
Thank you, Bill.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Yeah, it was
Thanks.
a lot of fun.
Thanks, Jason.
Thanks, guys.
I know you had a question, so I can talk to you if you want.